All right, I think we're live, Justin. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today at the Digital Influence Show. I mean, honestly, the Digital Influence Show is the most fun that I have every week. And today I expect it to be one of my favorites because I got to do this way. Ready? Yo, Justin.
Yo, Brandon.
So this is before I introduce Justin, I want everyone to know that mine and Justin's friendship is a great example of digital relationship building. Justin and I have never met in person. We've never shaken hands. I guarantee if we do meet, it would be a great big, awesome hug because we've already become such friends and we've never done anything more than spent time on Zoom and engaged with each other a lot on LinkedIn. So, everybody, I want to welcome Justin Blomgren to the Digital Influence Show. Justin, welcome, my friend.
Hi, Brandon. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor and a privilege, and I'm so grateful to be here with you this morning.
I am too. We're going to have a lot of fun today because number one, you're here. And number two, the topic is really, really great topic that you are going to share about. And I want you to share a little bit about your history as well. So everybody, Justin's, the title he has is a director of client development at PureSpectrum. What I love about Justin's role is basically what he does. He is an expert at prospecting and developing qualified leads that he then can hand off to the rest of his team. So today we're going to talk about empathy and its value in storytelling for salespeople. Right?
That's right.
All right. Well, let's jump in. And everybody, if you're listening, you have questions, you have comments, please pop them in the comments. If you're on Facebook, I think you got to give StreamYard approval of some sort. But other than that, pop them in the comments and let's have a great conversation. So, Justin, before we get started on empathy and storytelling, tell us a little bit about your history and what you're currently doing with PureSpectrum.
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. So I started basically doing in my profession in market research about 15 years ago. And I had been a financial planner and I lost my hat in 2008 and I decided to take, which was fine. And I decided to take my love of prospecting and sales and just people, just communicating and getting to know people. And really not trying to sell them anything, just getting to know them and then letting the relationship kind of trend and go where it wants to naturally. And I was working at, when I left the financial services industry, I started working for a telemarketing company and they were calling into market research shops. And it was something that they were having a really hard time doing. People were having a struggle kind of learning the industry in a short period of time and being able to have real conversations with people and talk intelligently about, what kind of research they're going to do, if it's qual or quant or, really uncovering the unconscious drivers behind consumer decision making. And sought out companies that I wanted to work with, that I loved the people that were leading the company and their thought process and just the way that they viewed life. And met some folks that were presidents of companies, going to a lot of industry conferences, and one thing led to another. And I basically just started partnering with different companies and helping their sales team in a different way. So people would say, hey, we're looking for a sales guy. And I would say, thank you, but I'd rather not do that. I have another idea for you. And the piece that I think was really missing, especially in my industry, is someone that most of the time in sales, people get hired because of the relationships that they have. And that's how the industry goes. And that's wonderful. But at some point, those leads, that the prospects that you have dry up. And
Right.
how do you get new ones? And I think that that's a challenge in the industry. And what I bring to the table is just a holistic approach that's really focused on the person on the other end and not the deal.
Excellent. I mean, I love that. And I think probably one of the reasons why you and I have connected and become such good friends is we speak that same language quite a bit. And I think, things like people buy from people, we've talked about known, like, and trusted. My modern version of known, like, and trusted is like, trusted, and remembered, because everything happens so quickly and there's so much information being thrown at people. But I want to get out of your way and just let you keep talking about that. Tell us a little bit about what that means and how it's different inside of what you do within PureSpectrum, and really the theory and the strategy of what you do.
Thanks, Brandon. Sure, be happy to. And again, I think that the challenge with this is that if I'm not applying for a position and I'm creating my own positions, there's so much. It's fun to do, right? It's very risky. You have to be really brave to do it. And I think the challenge there, just before I get into the specifics about how we do it, is that you're really always selling yourself with the C-suite at the company that you're with, saying, basically by leading by example and just the way you communicate to prove that things like this can work. Now, what does that translate to when you're selling? I think, at least my contention, is that a tremendous amount of people, when they're trying to sell something, are really focused on the product. They talk a lot about the product, but they don't talk about what it does to help you. And they're really focused on selling something and not really focused on getting to know that person and just trying to be a human being. I've found in my career that, when I was early starting out in my 20s, I would talk a lot about the product and say, this is great. These are the unique selling propositions. These are the points, unique selling points. And I started to figure out really quickly that professional life, talking about work, nobody cares. They get bored. I mean, let's be honest, right? I mean, that's not most people are not passionate. They've forgotten what they're passionate about anyway. And I don't think it's their job. I'm pretty sure it's not. And so really,
unfortunately,
well, no, it's okay. Unfortunately, sure. But I think society's kind of built that way. But anyway, the way that I do it is I just find out, like when we met, I just, it's being curious about somebody, really being curious, and like the Dale Carnegie thing, people work with people that they like 9 to 10. I mean, that's really it. So for me, the process is simple. It's just, disarming. When I make a lot of cold calls every day, like close to, as many as I can. And I speak to people every day that have, they're expecting somebody that's selling them an extended car warranty. And so, I come out and it's very disarming. It's, hey, Brandon, I know you're confused. I'm not calling about your car warranty. I promise. Boom, right there. You've taken the stress away from this person. I think it's just being empathetic to say, we understand what it's like when you get a call from someone and they don't know who you are. You're nervous. They're nervous. And, I think the goal here is to get somebody comfortable as quickly as possible. And I think that this is done in life by leaning into your weirdness, by being comfortable with your emotions, and also, putting yourself in experiences where you're comfortable with the emotions of others. So that when you're in those uncomfortable situations and scenarios, like a cold call, or somebody says, hey, Justin, it's great. Thanks for calling. Please go take a short walk off a long pier. I don't need this from you today. I love that answer too. And that doesn't, so I know one of the topics is, if I am training somebody or trying to help someone with prospecting, the first rule is always be yourself. Be comfortable being yourself. The most important piece of negotiation is to me, not what you say in the negotiation, but who you bring to that negotiation. And, the idea of bringing your best self is, for me, at least what I coach is, I had a wonderful employee this past summer named Cooper Marshall that I want to give a shout out to because I'm a huge fan of Cooper. And he was a high school senior, and he did a tremendous job. And I hired Cooper, not because of his knowledge in the industry, because he was fresh. He knew nothing about market research. But I hired him for this job based on who he was, very brave, confident, but humble. And he knew that he didn't have all the answers, and he knew exactly where to go to get the answer. But Cooper was a guy that I saw was an entrepreneur. He was a go-getter. He was somebody that would wake up in the morning and be excited to do whatever he was doing. Great outlook on life. And I think that's the most important piece. I don't think, I don't need to hire somebody based on knowing something. I need to hire them based on who they are, and the rest I can teach. But those very intrinsic qualities that are so important of, basically, is this a human being that if they fall, are they going to keep getting back up? Or are they going to be upset, and are they going to take it really hard? Now, both are fine. We can teach those things, right? And how to, get through call of reluctance and, the worry about what somebody else is going to say. But I don't know. I love what I do because I think that there's so many life lessons involved in this kind of a job, in being employed in this way, that are so complementary and analogous to life.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I talked a lot. I want to break for a second.
Yeah, no problem. Well, so you talk about like with Cooper, how so often when I'm talking with sales leaders, they would think basically everything you're saying was garbage because it's I don't care what they think, how they feel, or if they can recover from that. I just want them hitting the phones. I want them sending messages. I want them closing deals. How do you talk through that with me? Because obviously there's a big yin and yang going on here with that type of thinking.
Sure. Yeah. So people aren't machines. That's number one. I'm not a machine. I don't want to be a machine. I'm not interested in being one. And I don't want employees that are treated like numbers. I don't work at places like that. Not interested because to me, that's, I know we have to have KPIs and metrics and tracking for these things, and we do. But the most important thing is, also helping an individual grow in this role. I mean, they're not a machine. They're a human being. And people are not going to work hard or do a great job if they're anxious, because you can't perform when you're anxious or anxiety ridden. I mean, you can, and we all do it, but you're not operating at your highest level, and you're certainly cutting corners and maybe. Right. So the idea is, again, this is not a manipulation, and I'm not speaking for my company, but it's just treating people like humans. And I think what I love about PureSpectrum and where I am today is that's what they do.
Yeah.
They treat people like human beings, and they've let me, which I'm so ever grateful for, basically take this and do what I want with it. And they've given me the support to hire and do that, the way that I'd like to. And I think that that's so important. And I think you're right. I think a lot of sales leaders would say it's garbage. And I'd say, what's your turnover in sales like?
And the expense of that turnover.
Yeah.
The big expense of that.
And why do that? I mean, why not get, and this is just my mentality with it, and I'm not saying it's the right one, it's just my own, is that why not hire somebody that's going to be there and really going to care? And people might say, well, Justin, how do you know if they're going to care?
Yeah. So I'm getting visions of Ted Lasso going on here while we're talking. I hope that's okay.
I don't watch TV, but I've heard about Ted Lasso.
Well, I think you should make an exception for that one. So let's get to the topic at hand too. So two things. So one, where you and I'm sure can have a great conversation for everybody, is on cold calling. But the topic on hand is, because I don't believe in cold calling anymore. And I know you still have a strategy with cold calling, but I think we can do it. Create those first conversations much more efficient through social. And I'm not totally against cold calling, but we'll save that for another conversation. How's that?
Sounds great.
I do want to get to it. I probably shouldn't have even brought that up, but I do want to get to the topic that we talked about of, when you and I are talking about, I wanted you to be a guest. We were talking about topics, and you said, what about the importance of inclusion and empathy in storytelling for sales? And I thought that is such a great topic. And I think it's a great topic for this reason. Most sales leaders, most sales trainers, most sales teams don't even know the topic, much less train the topic.
Right.
So what exactly do you mean by that? And why is it important in sales creation?
Sure. So empathy and inclusion, I touch on inclusion first. I'll use Cooper as an example. Cooper was not an employee of mine. He was my equal. Uh, I'm pausing a little bit because I think that I want that to sink in if anybody's listening to this. When I work with people, they're not somebody that works underneath me. They're an equal, and I treat them that way, just like I treat everybody that way. And I think that the spirit of inclusion in that empowers people. I learned as an entrepreneur about 10 years ago that when you're running a business or you start a business, people care far more and work far harder when they have part ownership in that business. So I think, there's a big difference, and I'm talking about kind of the outliers on a statistical scale, right? But I mean, if you hire somebody and you treat them like a number, and they're punching into a clock every day, and they don't feel like they can actually have a life, I think that stagnates their own growth and their own work that they do. But I think on the other hand, if you hire somebody and again include them in the strategy talks and things. I mean, Cooper was a part of the majority of meetings that I would go to in a day. And I wanted him to see and really learn the inner workings of what we did in our industry so that he felt like he was really a part of it. And I don't think I think a lot of times between people in sales and others that I'm saying that the wrong way, but there's more of kind of a leader servant role. And I don't care for that. I think it's disrespectful to others. And I think that they don't feel included and they kind of feel less than. And I don't think collaboration is best that way, because I know, for example, if I've got somebody that's calling with me and trying to help bring in leads or sending emails or using social, I want to hear their ideas too. And they're talking to people and everything else. I want to take information from all angles that I can get of, hey, what are you hearing? What are you not hearing? How are your conversations going? Things like that, really caring to try to help somebody.
Yeah. And so a couple things there. Cooper's doing sales, so he's got to spend a lot of time working in sales, and yet you're including him and bringing him into meetings, things. How do you balance that? Because I mean, I get that you want them to have ownership, you want them to feel empowered that they're part of making the decisions that influence their daily lives, and yet we also have numbers that we need to hit. How did you balance that?
Great question, Brandon. Well, here's my answer. I don't know. I don't believe in there's a right or wrong answer to this, but with Cooper, I had an agenda basically once he was hired of things that we had to work through. And the way that I set it up was for the first 2 weeks. I had a couple sessions with him for about an hour long each during that first week, about 3 hours total, where I kind of did a data dump where I told him about the industry, everything else. But then how did I balance the training versus the calling? I think the way it's always set up is I tell him very transparently from the beginning, hey, a lot to learn. First 2 weeks are really just going to be knowledge base and like homeschooling. And then after that, we'll go get our feet on the street. And I think what we ended up doing in that instance was very quick learner. Usually I find that astute people can learn an industry in about 2 weeks. If they've got somebody that understands that industry, doesn't take that long. But then after that 2 week period, with Cooper, it was just a week. And then I had him calling and on the phones and dealing with it. And, I think the most rewarding thing is seeing how, everyone's nervous when they start this. But then, once he's doing the training and calling, I think the balance really comes in just how you transparently explain to the person that you're working with, this is what we're going to do. This is kind of what our agenda looks like. These are the items that we're going to cross off, and just being honest and saying there'll be a lot of ghosting and shadowing, but also, I'm going to throw you into the deep end just to shake off the nerves and things like that. But I would be, with him in the room or, on the other line while he was calling, so he knew I was there. Yeah. But I think the balance is just in the way it's delivered and the way that you, schedule trainings with that person, and then the way you're managing that based on how you manage your plan.
So how does this type of onboarding of salespeople? I know a lot of companies right now, they're struggling with finding salespeople they can hire, and then they're struggling with retention for a variety of reasons. How does this style of inclusion and storytelling in the onboarding process, how's that benefit the company in the long run? What have
Well,
you seen?
well, I mean, for example, with Coop, he was done with college. He wants to come back really bad.
Right.
Wants to come back, and I mean, I don't know what's better than something like that. And I think what it does benefiting the company. I mean, anything that I'm related to that has to do with the company that I'm working with, I want to make sure that we make it a better place, that the
Mhm.
image of the company is upheld or improved based on how we're having conversations. And I think that, when you include and when you allow somebody to tell stories and be themselves, I think that it just creates a wonderful culture of people that, you're really helping to be the best version of themselves. Um, in their life too. So
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah. So Thomas jumped in with the question, and this is I was moving towards this direction. So Thomas, thanks so much. But he says, how should a salesperson use empathy when they reach out to new prospects?
Love that.
Great question, Thomas.
Great question, Thomas. Thank you so much. I think it's this, right? I think if we understand that every single person we meet is thinking about the basic same things, right? Your significant other, lack thereof, what you're going to watch, what you're going to eat, right? And your bills.
Right.
That's what everybody thinks about. So if you know that,
Are we just going through Maslow's hierarchy of needs here? Is that our
no, no, but I think that those are five relatable things that.
Yeah, well, that's why I think Maslow was spot on with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're thinking about those right now. I didn't even know Maslow said that, but thank you. And no idea, and not trying to plagiarize at all. But anyway, getting to the question from Thomas, I think it's just understanding that everybody's thinking about those things and
Mhm.
finding a way to talk with them about something that's not business related.
Yeah.
Hey, and what do you do to do that? Well, use your senses, right? Eyes and ears and feelings. So, if we're in the day of Zoom conversations. So, I mean, we could start a topic about that volleyball or basketball, whatever that red thing is with the Nike thing. There's a million things that you can
Soccer.
hear. Soccer.
Soccer
Thank you.
ball. Yes.
Yeah. Listen,
Yeah.
sports, Brandon. I love sports, but I don't watch them anymore. But I think that it's just finding out what that person likes, hearing something in the background. I'll talk to
Yeah.
somebody and they'll have a dog in the background or something. And it's just pulling from those things and just
Mhm.
using that. And I think that it works when you're authentic. You have to be
Yeah.
authentic. You really have to care. And if you don't care, and how do you hear those things in conversation? Well, it's like when somebody goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, you don't care.
Right.
So it's just using your senses and your intuition. And how do you do that? I think the way you do that is by there's a combination of living in your head and your heart. So I think people that
Mhm.
are really highly analytical that live in their mind and not in their heart are usually it's kind of like worst case scenario type of thing. But I think the idea is to move more into your heart and be thinking about that other person, trying to put yourself like Rob
Mhm.
Volpe's new book, which I think quick shout out to Rob Volpe's new book. Tell me more about that.
Excellent. Excellent. You know what? I've got to go I pre-ordered it and I never got it. So I'm not really sure what happened, but I talked to Rob like 3 or 4 days before the book came out. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm waiting for it. And I realized just the other day, I never got it.
Oh
So I'm gonna
no.
have to go find out what happened with Amazon, or I actually, you know what? It could be at my office. I haven't been in my office in a couple of weeks.
All
My
right.
home
Well,
office is where I live, but yeah,
either way, we
but
got to get
give the shout out to Rob and talk about his book.
Rob's amazing. And I haven't even read this book yet, but I'll just say really quick shout out to Rob Volpe, a master of empathy in the market research industry and an amazing human being. And I think he's written an incredible book that's super important because we need empathy now more than ever
More
in
than
this
ever.
world.
Yeah.
And, I think the message is simple. It's don't give up. Hope
Yeah.
that people are people and they're not out to get you.
Yeah. One of the places that one of the areas, I guess, that you and I really connected on too. And I'm a sales guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I've built and sold a few companies. And I say that not from a braggadocious standpoint, but from a standpoint of I know how to drive. Like when you have to drive, you have to drive. But I have been a huge proponent of culture and empathy. And one of the things I love to say to people when they start working with me in a company is, my goal is for you to be better on the day you leave than you are today. And I want to partner with you to get there, because I don't know what it means for you. You have to share it with me. And my company's always had things in place of external training and for personal development and all that. And I say all that from this point of view, and I want to hear your perspective on it. I had a CEO of a company tell me one time, we were chatting through things, and he says, "Oh, you're one of those guys that actually believes this shit." And I do believe there's a culture of talking about treating people well, and there's a culture of actually believing, not just in treating people well, but actually treating people well and focused on that actually grows your company better and faster. What do you like? What do you think about that? Or how would you respond to that as well? And obviously I showed my cards there for anyone listening. You know exactly what I think, but I do come across, and we've lost customers because sales leaders are like, this is too touchy feely. I'm like, well, you know what? If you don't allow us to train your team this way, then it's just not going to work anyway. Like if you're not going to support the culture of it, it won't work. But to share from your perspective about that.
Thanks, Brandon. First of all, I wouldn't work with that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wouldn't want to take his money, wouldn't be interested in it, wouldn't try to. I call people like that non-believers. And it's not disrespectful. It's just that, again, I'm not a computer. I'm not a number. I understand my social security number is my number, right? But I'm Justin, and I have feelings and emotions, and that's how people work together. They don't work together based on transactional things. I mean, maybe. But again, to your point, I don't want to work with those people.
Yeah, and see, and I think even at that transactional level, right? Even at that level, there's still the human element that we can't get away from, and people buy from people who they like, because part of that buying process is time spent. And if I have a choice between person A, who I enjoy being with, and person B, who I think is not someone I want to spend time with, it's a very clear, simple answer. and I would even say a lot of people are willing to give on some more factual type things to work with the person that they like rather than the person they don't like spend a little bit more money, or go through a little bit more of a process, or we won't get these features with it, but I also don't get that person with it.
I think that's exactly right. And I think, so I come up against this all the time because of the unique position that I'm in. I spend a living going to conferences and doing my thing and just meeting people, right? And then I think the fun about that is that you meet one of these presidents or CEOs and you talk to them and you get to know them. And first of all, it's, I think, understanding that everybody, putting yourself in other people's shoes, but just realizing that nobody's better than you or less than you. It's just everyone's an equal. It doesn't matter their position, how much money they have. That's all nonsense to me. It doesn't mean anything. I don't pray to power, prestige, and money. I'm impressed with people's kindness and their empathy and their inclusion. And if in a conversation with someone, if it becomes very apparent to me that they're just interested in my business or in getting something from me, that conversation ends very quickly. And I'm very happy for it too, because I'm just not interested. There are far too many people that are brave enough to be themselves and know who they are. And hey, you might be listening and say, well, how do I know myself? Ethan Hawke, really great TED Talk, maybe my favorite one of all time. To know yourself, it's really easy. You follow your love. That's all you do. You follow your love. So many people don't do that. They're obsessed with worry. They're obsessed with, bills and
Yeah.
problems and things. And I think that, when you take yourself out of those things, start living in a constant state of gratefulness,
Mhm.
change your perspective and your perspective on life. I don't know. I think that life begins outside of your comfort zone, but when you lean into being yourself. And I think that,
Yeah.
if we're just worried about, hey, how many sales are we going to get? How many calls have you made? How many emails have you sent? I mean, that's fine, but it's
Mhm.
quality that we want in
Yeah.
conversations. It's quality in building a relationship. And I don't know. I take a very different stance than most, and I get
Yeah,
yelled
and I
at quite a lot for it, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I get that, but I think like I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and she said, she goes, "Oh gosh, we could," and she's going to be a guest on the show, and she said, "We could even talk about that real big, horrible word that nobody likes called authenticity."
Oh,
And
that's my
and yeah, and I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And she says, it's people are so scared of it. What does it mean? It wasn't, and it really just means just be comfortable being yourself and know that there's this like um, there's a group out there, there's a section of people out there that will never be for you. And stop spending all your energy trying to make them for you when you just embrace your style, your person, your authenticity, that then your community develops. And obviously that's why I'm a big fan of using social prospecting mechanisms, because we can control through the content we create and the engagement that we do with people. If we are just who we are and we can be fully authentic in that, our community, our tribe, if you will, to borrow, Seth Godin's phrase of building our tribe, they have a chance to know who we are and become part of our community or a part of our tribe. And it's much more powerful than trying to act in a manner that is disingenuous to who you truly are, because you can't keep that up.
Well, it doesn't work.
Right.
So when I'm being apathetic, everybody that knows me knows it, and they're like, "What's wrong? It's not you. It's a bad look for you. What's going on?" That's good. That's what you want, right? Is that you want that. Now, when somebody says they're scared of the word authenticity, it's because they're not brave enough to do it themselves.
Right.
So it's a wonderful. It's so if somebody says that, it's like, well, thank you for the post-it note telling me more about yourself,
Mhm.
because now I have a lot of information about you, and I know that you lack self-belief. And again, I mean, I think the difference between confidence and being, somebody can listen to this and say, well, Justin's got a big ego. No, not true. I failed so much in my life, so very much, all the time. And I've just gotten really good at failing. Everything's a happy accident now. It's just a happy accident. It's like, oh, that didn't work out. There must be a really good reason why. And the next
Yeah.
one comes really quickly. And I don't know, changing perspectives. I think being a pessimist doesn't help anyone, certainly doesn't help growth. It
Yeah.
stagnates growth and it crushes it.
Yeah. Well, and just as you said before, being angry, being frustrated, being treated like you're a machine or treating other people like a machine, it doesn't have a fruitful history. It wears people out. It wears you out, and I think it just makes people miserable.
I think so too. And I think that when somebody doesn't understand or they take a pessimistic approach to someone being authentic, operating with authenticity, or they call it being pithy or something, my
Mhm.
response usually in my mind, or if I choose to say it, is I wish you healing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
That
Yeah, I
person,
think one that I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut
it's,
you off.
no, because I think that that person is in pain.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think one of the I'm gonna let me share this and get your response to it, and then we'll wrap up. I truly believe that our bodies, depending on what people believe, our body, our spirit, our soul, we were not meant to be empty beings. We are meant to be full, and full things pour out into others. and empty things will suck to be full because we weren't meant to be full. And when we're doing activities in our lives that are disingenuous to who we are, that authenticity piece, it empties us quickly, and empty things suck, is what I like to say, right? They've got to suck to get full, but they suck. And when people, us, companies are filled with people that are empty because of the culture, or they're doing the job they don't like because of the pay, or they don't like the way they're being treated, I believe it has a direct relationship on sales, because buyers can sense that, they can feel that. There's a a vibration, if you will, of that we don't want to buy from people like that, and they just struggle. But when a company is filled with people that have been treated well, they're in roles that are giving them energy and life and fulfillment, they're better at selling because they don't really have to sell. They're just showing up and they're building relationships and conversations.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm really lucky to work for a company that treats us like human beings, that cares about our progression in life, and that wants to give us opportunities for growth. I've worked at companies that aren't that way, like we all have. And I don't know. I mean, really lucky to be part of a great culture, at a company that really fosters quality and human interaction.
And how does that culture and the way they treat you, how does that influence this, sales and the company growth?
Well, I mean, again, I think it goes back to happy, again, you're creating an environment of growth and support for your team members. And the company I work at now does an amazing job of doing that. And, it shows. I think it shows in the growth of the company. I don't want to speak to specific numbers, but, where I work at now, we're growing in leaps and bounds, and it's really exciting. And, I think that treating your employees that way translates into just a really fun place to work.
Yeah, excellent. Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining me on the Digital Influence Show today. I really appreciate it. And before we go, if somebody wants to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Well, I would love that. Please come to my LinkedIn and send me a message.
There you go. All right, Justin, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Thank you so much. Oh, we got Nikki just joined us, which is, there we go. Just pulled in. Love that. Nobody is less than you or better than you. All equal. Good to remember. Thanks for that, Nikki.
Thanks
for
Nikki.
popping in here at the end. All right, everybody. You have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday, and thanks for joining us on the Digital Influence Show. Take care.